we have a deaf dog. So, you know, a lot of fun things going around at my house right now.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull
Yes,
moment.
I
No.
understand.
The dog's the only one that can't talk back right now. So.
Good morning. I'm here with Jud Conkle, one of our agents here in the Evans location. And Jud, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Tell me a little bit, how did you get into the real estate business?
Real estate's always been something I have wanted to do. Even as a kid, I liked flipping through the old, before the internet was really the big thing, like flipping through the old magazines and
Like
seeing houses.
Homes and Land, Real
Yeah,
Estate Book, all
yeah,
those things.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Loved flipping through those. Kind of got to the point in college where I changed my major about 4 times and couldn't really focus on what I thought I wanted to do, and you know, almost just said I'm just going to go ahead and get my real estate license and kind of stop what I'm doing. I met Woody through my old job and got to talking to him. Kind of cold called him one day and said, "Hey, I'm interested in real estate. You have a few minutes to chat?" I came up to the office and sat down with him for a few minutes and kind of laid everything out in pretty straightforward terms, which I appreciated.
He's a good source of knowledge.
He is, yeah. No question goes unanswered. And so, you know, that's been 4 years ago now, and so the rest is history.
Very good, very good. So what did you do prior to getting into the real estate business?
Kind of a lot, actually. I first started out interning at Georgia Southern, where I went to college. In the president's office, I was working for the vice president of government relations down there. Then did a stint in DC, working up there. And after that was done, I started out working for a campaign consulting firm. And
so you wanted to get into the political world?
Yeah. My major was political science with a focus in public administration. And so originally thought I wanted to just be a city manager type deal and be in some type of government administration.
Sure.
And did some research analyst stuff for a campaign consulting firm, and then got moved up to a director spot on these issue-based campaigns, and we focused on voter registration and any issue-based items that were coming up on ballots for elections.
Oh wow, yes.
And then after that was done, my wife's family founded Escape Outdoors here in town.
Okay, yeah.
And so I went to work for them for about 5 years and ran their operations for their stores here. And then we were approached about selling the business. And so we sold out, and that's how Woody kind of came into play with the real estate stuff.
So you did kind of a 180 from where
100%, yeah,
right
100%, yeah. It was definitely an interesting turn of events, from going to selling in a captive audience such as retail is to actively trying to pursue sales in real estate.
So family, I know y'all moved about a year ago.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, we bought a new house about 2 years ago down in Augusta. My wife is Katie. We've been married since 2018. We've got 2 children. We've got a 2.5-year-old little girl and a 3-month-old little boy, and we have a deaf dog. So, you know, a lot of fun things going around at my house right now.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment.
Yes,
No.
I understand.
The dog's the only one that can't talk back right now. So,
so the real estate world, you've been in it, you said about 4 years. How has that experience been of kind of, you know, we've gone through COVID, we've come out of that. What do you see as kind of the real estate market?
I think it's still a very strong market here in Augusta. COVID obviously threw kind of a wrench in everyone's plans, but for most agents, if you were out there and still trying to work, it was plentiful. There was a lot of good business to be had. Home prices appreciated at record numbers.
Right.
And so sellers were making more money, buyers were having to pay more money, but it was a great market to be in. It's obviously slowed down a little bit, but from my experience this year, it's still a pretty strong seller's market. You're not commanding maybe as many offers or offers that are
There's still just low inventory out
Right.
there, so it creates that seller's market, that strong buyer demand out there that kind of helps with that.
Yeah, inventory is definitely still tight.
Yes, definitely.
So my wife graduated from Georgia Southern. 2 of her 3 brothers graduated from Georgia Southern. Her mom and dad both graduated from Georgia Southern. So huge Georgia Southern family. We have, 10 season tickets to games, and oddly enough, my dad, or her dad and me were in the same fraternity, obviously at different times at Georgia Southern, and her mom were both in the same sorority at Georgia Southern.
Oh, wow,
and so weird
Good
little.
thing you went to Southern, or you wouldn't been in.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be. Yeah, weird little connection as far as that goes, which is kind of cool. And we love Georgia Southern, and we love to go back. And we're the type of people that we've obviously had so much experience and involvement with Georgia Southern that it always kills me when I see people who I know went to Southern wearing Georgia polos. And so that's like our biggest pet peeve, is seeing that. And I know you're a UGA grad,
Right,
so you
sure.
have every right to wear that.
Well, in this interview, I'm wearing Georgia Southern blue right here.
Clearly for you.
Right, correct. And I'm wearing Clemson orange, which not really a fan. So, is what it is.
So I know that you're in the residential and commercial business, and so tell me a little bit about some of the differences you see in residential and commercial, and what you've seen out in the market with, especially a little bit about commercial.
Yeah. They both have their nuances. Sales are sales, really, at the end of the day. But commercial versus residential, I think there's obviously a lot more planning and involvement that goes into it. It's not a quick turnaround, 30-day turnaround usually on anything.
Yeah, like residential tries to.
Right, yeah, residential house, if you can knock it out in 30 to 45 days from list, you're doing great. Commercial, you might be sitting on it for 6 months or later. And so I sold the Wicker Barn on Washington Road a few years ago, and I honestly think during the whole time that I was working with that client, it was probably a full 18-month time frame from when we started talking about selling his business to closing.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of planning and involvement that goes into that, especially when it's an active business. You have some other restrictions that are different.
Zoning requirements.
Zoning requirements, yeah. You've really got to vet candidates when you're selling commercial too, because of, like you said, restrictions on zoning and things like that. And so it's really a 180 from that end as far as selling a home versus a commercial business. If someone is coming in and trying to put another business in there, does that fit with Columbia County's zoning ordinance?
Sure.
Do they have the cash to pay for this?
Well, it's interesting in commercial too. You see some of the investors out there with the vision, like it's the Wicker Barn, but then this buyer turned it into a kind of a prompt care, kids prompt care.
Yeah.
So that was kind of unique right there.
Yeah. So that's exactly what happened. We got multiple offers on it from everywhere from a Popeyes franchise wanting to add on that side of the street to a car wash who wanted to do it, and unfortunately we didn't have the land requirements that they need for a car wash, and so ended up working with a developer out of Atlanta that represents a chain of urgent cares, and they came in and put what I believe at least is the first pediatric only urgent care in the CSRA, and so they did a great job on build out and turning that into that. So I think it fit a niche for them, and they were happy to have it and have a great location with some really good visibility.
Right. So Jud, where do you see yourself in the real estate business in 5 years or more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and I think that's something that probably every agent should at least kind of have an idea about and kind of plan ahead. You obviously want to stay in the moment and sort of focus on what is currently going on, so you're doing the right things. But for me at least, my goal has been the last couple of years and will continue to be to be more consistent in the business I'm doing. I felt like my first few years in, I was really streaky. I'd have a real hot quarter and then a real cold quarter.
Yeah, we see a lot of that in the business. That
Yeah.
Once you start learning it a little bit more, seeing kind of some of the systems that are out there and everything, then it's not a roller coaster ride. It becomes a lot more consistent income.
Yeah, and so, number one, I just want to be more consistent and continue to grow my sales year over year. But number two, would love to continue focusing some of my aspects of business on commercial sales and helping folks in that regard. And then would also love to start getting into some aspects of development, and whether that be, turning raw land into tract ready for another builder to come in and build, or taking smaller parcels of land and potentially subdividing them and working with a builder to build some new houses. Something that I obviously, don't have a ton of knowledge on at this point, but would love to continue researching and studying and seeing where I can sort of carve a niche out with doing some smaller developments without having, a 400 home development on my hands.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think that's a great way to kind of get started
Yeah.
and kind of doing and learning and meeting new people and meeting people that can probably help you more and move into that larger tracts and stuff that we'll do. So we talked about your family, and so what do you like to do on a Friday or Saturday night? I know you got the small kids and everything, so what do you and your wife do when you can kind of get the kids down for bed at night?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's going to sound fairly boring, but mostly it's sitting on the couch and watching some Netflix and having a glass of wine and just feeling like the weight of the world is off our shoulders for a few hours until somebody's up at 6 a.m. screaming and hollering to get out of the crib.
Kind of comes early, doesn't it?
Yeah, we used to love to go down to Beck's and have a great meal on Friday night, especially during Lent, since we're Catholic and can't eat meat really.
Right.
And so now it's more like going to Poblano's and letting the kids slap some cheese dip all over the table and having a good time.
We've all been there. We've all been there with that.
It's a fun time for sure. It's a unique perspective on life.
So sometimes it's not bad though to just kind of hang out and grill out or do something to just kind of maybe invite some friends over and just enjoy the evening. Relax and ease, and the evenings are great.
And I love to cook. I probably cook 5 days a week.
Okay, so you're the cook in the family.
Yeah. And my wife's a good cook, don't get me wrong, but something I really enjoy and sort of a stress reliever at times when you need to kind of focus on something else. It's easy to kind of get caught up in cooking and forget about, what worries you had that day. And so spent a lot of time with my grandma as a kid, and she was your traditional Southern cook, fried chicken on Sundays. And I was always in the kitchen with her and, licking the spoon from the brownie batter. And so I picked up a lot of that from her, and very lucky in that regard. I know, right? We'll have to go get us some lunch after this. So this is the Allman Brothers logo from their, I believe, 1971 album, Eat a Peach. And so it is a peach truck.
So you're from the Macon area?
Yeah, originally from Griffin, Georgia, which is roughly 45 minutes north of Macon, really about directly in between Macon and Atlanta. Went to school at a small private school in a town about 15 minutes north of Macon called Forsyth. And so a ton of friends obviously are from Macon growing up, and the big house, which is where the Allman Brothers lived for an extended period of time in Macon, is in downtown Macon. And so we kind of always grew up around that music, and my dad is kind of grew up in that generation. He's in his 70s now, and so he was a big fan and was in the Navy during Vietnam and was always listening to the Allman Brothers. And so I got fed on sort of inordinate amount of classic rock, Allman Brothers, Clapton, Little Feat, Wet Willie, Marshall Tucker Band. And so big Allman Brothers fan. And this is Eat a Peach, and that's Eat a Peach for Peace. Hey y'all, I'm Jud Conkle, real estate agent here at Blanchard and Calhoun in the Evans office. A little bit about me and why I think you should work with me. Some of the hallmarks of myself as an agent is constant communication. I think that's the biggest difference between agents now. I like to pick up the phone and talk to you in person, but I also am going to treat you the same as I'm going to treat anybody else. Whether that's a $50,000 lot or $1 million house, I want you to get that 5-star service and ensure that every need is met and what your goal is to do. So, I'm very open, upfront, honest, and transparent, and I believe that serves me well as far as dealing with other folks in that regard. And so, yeah, I think that's why you should probably pick me to be an agent. We do have some other great agents here, so I'm not going to get my feelings hurt if you don't.